Hi everyone, this is my first lecture in the series of ancient civilizations. I'll only be covering Egyptian civilization and Indus Valley civilization for the very reason that the Mesopotamian civilization has already been covered in my class and we're already tested upon it, so I don't have the time to go over that stuff again. So anyway, so let's start off with the Egyptian civilization. A quick intro into the Egyptian civilization. It's a vast civilization. It has, I don't know, like six periods and innumerous number of pharaohs, also referred to as kings. In simple words, they're just kings, but in Egyptian language, they were referred to as pharaohs. Depending on which part of the world you're from, you may pronounce it differently, but the idea is that they were kings. And so in Egyptian civilization, we're basically going to be dividing our the time period that we know of in, and obviously you can't see that part, oh, right here. So it can be divided into time frames as follows. So the first one is the pre-dynastic period. The pre-dynastic period goes from 4000 C to 3000 BC. Then there is the early dynastic period, which runs from 3000 BC to 2650 BC. And then there's this big period, the Old Kingdom, and this is actually the largest period of ancient Egyptian civilization. It runs for 525 years. This is the longest period. 525 years is a big time, is a big period of time. So that's the Old Kingdom. The fourth period is the first intermediate period. Now, these intermediate periods were interesting in some ways and weird in other senses. It's because during these periods, sometimes Egypt was, flowing with trade policies and stuff like that. Like it was really growing, and during other periods, it was a time of chaos and upheaval. So these ones are a little interesting to learn about, but obviously they're important periods as well. Now you'll notice that two of these three periods are of very short duration. So the first intermediate period is only about 135 years, and the second intermediate period is only about 100 years. And the second intermediate period is actually the shortest period amongst all the periods, including the kingdoms as well. Okay, surprisingly, the third intermediate period is actually a pretty big period time-wise, because it spans for around 405 years. So the fifth period is then the Middle Kingdom, which goes from 2050 BC to 1650 BC, and then we have the second intermediate period, which goes from 1650 to 1550, that's about 100 years, and then the New Kingdom, 1550 to 1069 BC, and then we have the third intermediate period, which runs for about 405 years. And this is a big period. It's a big, I should say, intermediary period. I don't know if it's intermediary or intermediary. In any case, you guys get the point. So it's a big intermediate period. So, that is a quick intro into the Egyptian civilization. Another thing, I'm just brainstorming, the basic things that come to our minds when we think about the Egyptian civilization. The first thing that comes to my mind, at least, and I'm sure comes to your heads as well, is pyramids, right? Whenever we think of Egyptian civilization or Egypt in general, we think about the big pyramids that were built there. Now, these pyramids were a place to store the king's dead bodies, because they considered, at least during some of these kingdoms, the kings were considered to be representing God, and it was important that the God's body be preserved properly. And it was also understood, it was also believed that you enter a new life, and in this new life, it's a totally different world, and you need all kinds of things that they stored with the burial. They stored like items that you would probably need in your second life. So that's one thing that obviously comes to my mind when I think about the Egyptian civilization, the pyramids, right? The Great Pyramids, the Valley of the Kings, the tombs, mummies. Mummies is another thing. And obviously, these pyramids stored mummies, and these mummies have been discovered, and we know so much about the Egyptian civilization from those mummies. So that's a quick intro into the Egyptian civilization. We'll head right into the pre-dynastic period in the next video and see what happened there. There's a lot of kings' names to remember, so make sure you keep a track of all of them. Alright, see you in the next video.